It goes. Thank you, everybody. I am Admiral Owen Swart, Commanding Officer, USS Dauntless, and this is Briefing with the Admiral for stardate negative 268426.9. I am the Admiral in question, and today we're going to be looking at uniforms, specifically the uniforms used by the USS Dauntless, which is where we are. All right, so let's not mess around. Let's get straight into it. This is probably going to be a bit of a long one again, so I want to get straight to it and make sure we cover as much information as possible. So firstly, what is a uniform? Wearing an official uniform carries with it a certain responsibility. When you put on your uniform, you become a walking symbol of the organizations you represent, the USS Dauntless, the 8th Fleet, and Starfleet as a whole. That being the case, it's important to ensure that you and your uniform project the best possible image. Among other things, one of the best ways to do this is to maintain your uniform in excellent condition. It should always be clean and pressed, and it should display the correct insignia. In order to ensure professional consistency of uniforms aboard the Dauntless, you'll need to have your uniform inspected and certified. This is done, as I mentioned in the last episode, by the ship's quartermaster. We're going to skip over this where do I start section for now, and we're going to move on to dress code. Each official Dauntless event, away mission, or meeting has a dress code laid down by the mission commander. The dress code stipulates which set of uniforms you're expected to wear when attending the event. This is to ensure that, as far as possible, the crew presents a unified, professional image to each other, to other crews, to civilians, to potential recruits, and to the media. The more unified and professional we appear, the better our overall image. In addition to the uniforms we're about to talk about, all crew members are expected to adhere to certain universal dress code requirements. First is personal hygiene. A Dauntless crew member is clean, fragrant, and properly groomed at all times. One would think that this should go without saying, but unfortunately it doesn't. Next is uniform maintenance. All uniforms must be clean, pressed, and free of major defects. If a mission would require you to soil your uniform, it is recommended that you bring a spare uniform with you to change into at your earliest convenience. So this is something like if we're on a paintball mission, odds are your uniform is going to get soiled as a result of the mission. So you want to bring with you a spare uniform for afterwards so that you've got something clean to change into so that you are clean, fragrant, and properly groomed for the next phase of the mission or for your journey home. Unless otherwise stipulated, the default dress code for all missions is Class B. This means that crew members are expected to wear a correct and accurate uniform certified Class B uniform during the event. Individual members may select which version of the Class B uniform to wear based on propriety and preference. I'm going to have to put this on hold for a moment. Please stand by. I have a domestic issue that requires my immediate attention. I'll be back in a second. Apologies for that, folks. That's one of the downsides of recording live, especially if you're the only human in the room. Sometimes our non-human occupants require special attention. So anyway, that gives you a sense of what the dress code is. So any given mission has a specified dress code. Unless otherwise mentioned, it is a Class B. What does Class B mean? Well, we'll get to that in a couple of minutes. But sometimes it could be Class A or Class C, or even could be no uniform at all. But let's crack on. Another important thing to cover before we move on to the actual uniforms is what's the difference between a uniform and a costume. I mentioned this in a video a few weeks ago, and it can be tricky to tell the difference between these two things sometimes, especially when you're dealing with fandom. Here's the key to understanding it. A costume is an outfit that makes you look like something you are not. You're dressed up as someone or something other than you. A uniform is an outfit that represents what you are. It communicates your identity and status within a specific organization to other members and to everyone else. So, for example, if you attend a convention like Lieutenant Commander Patterson did here, dressed up as an Andorian soldier, that is cosplay. I happen to know Commander Patterson personally. She is not an Andorian. In fact, Andorians are not real. They're pretend. Anybody dressed as an Andorian is in cosplay. Whereas this photo down here at a different convention, that was me wearing my uniform, this very uniform back when I was a Vice Admiral that represented me at the time. So it's my branch of service color, my rank, my organization represented my identity to the people at that convention. So that goes a little bit further. We strongly recommend against wearing costumes representing ranks and branches of service that are not your own. We'll cover branches of service in a moment, but remember that for now. If you are a member of a given organization, such as the USS Dauntless, cosplaying as another member of that organization with a different position and status can be interpreted as disrespectful and offensive to anyone else who wears the uniform. In the same way that it would be inappropriate for a nurse to cosplay as a doctor or for an army corporal to cosplay as a general, it would be inappropriate for you to display the wrong insignia, even if it's part of a costume. This comes to an issue where, so in the military, it's called stolen valor. Here we don't call it that. It's not quite the same thing, but it's a similar concept. Stolen valor is a situation where if you wear a medal that you didn't earn, you are pretending to the world that you did earn it. That you are therefore stealing the valor of the people that did earn that medal by displaying it on yourself. You haven't earned that. It doesn't belong to you. You have no right to wear it, but by wearing it anyway, you're stealing that valor from other people. In Starfleet, it's a similar concept. Again, we don't call it stolen valor here. We're not a military organization. But if you're displaying a rank that you haven't earned, that's disrespectful to two groups of people. Firstly, to the people who have earned the right to wear the rank that you're displaying. You haven't done that work. They have. They're displaying it because they've earned the right to wear it. You're displaying it despite the fact that you haven't earned that right. That's disrespectful to those people. Secondly, it's disrespectful to the people who have the same rank as you. So you're telling those people that the work that they've put in to earn the rank that you possess is not worthy of recognition. It's not important enough. It's not good enough. Therefore, you're displaying a higher rank. So it's disrespectful. It's offensive. It's just rude. We recognize that cosplay is an important part of fandom for a lot of people. But please be aware of the responsibility that's serving in an organization like the Dauntless. Try to keep your cosplay in the civilian realm, that is, cosplaying civilian characters, not Starfleet personnel, and steer clear of impersonating other Starfleet officers. If you really can't avoid it, please discuss your intentions with your direct superior to establish the proper protocol. We're not saying that you can never do it or that you'll be punished if you do it or anything like that. Just that we're asking you, please don't. It's rude. It's bad manners. Please don't do that. So yes, again, we're not claiming that stolen valor is a thing, but it is a similar concept. All right, so we've dispensed with that. I'm not going to mention that again. We are going to get onto which set of uniforms is the correct set for use with the USS Dauntless. So I mentioned back in our What is the Dauntless video that the USS Dauntless uses the fictional metaphor of a Defiant class starship. The Defiant class was a class of ship that was in use during the Dominion War period in the Star Trek universe, and that carries with it certain thematic elements, including the 2373 uniform set, which is this one. This is the basic Class B uniform that you will recognize mostly from Star Trek Deep Space Nine, a couple of the movies, First Contact, Nemesis, Insurrection. We've also seen people appear in this uniform in places like a couple of episodes of Star Trek Voyager, Lower Decks, and even in Picard. So this is the 2373 uniform set, which is the de facto uniform set for the USS Dauntless. But before we go on to more specifics, I want to go back to the idea of branch of service, and that's here. So in the last episode, we talked about departments. So departments specify the kind of work that you do aboard the Dauntless. These departments fall into these things called branches of service, which is sort of a higher level order of organization where which kind of groups those departments into broader categories. And we have three of these broad categories. We have the command branch of service, which includes departments on board command and recruits, and that is signified by the red branch of service color in uniforms. We'll get to the points there, but you'll see it here on my color. That's red, which represents command. The gold color represents the operations branch of service, which includes the department's operations, obviously, also includes engineering, communications, and security. All four of those departments fall within the operations branch of service in this specific time period, 2373, and so all of those are represented by the gold branch of service color. Then the third one is teal, which represents the sciences branch of service, which includes the department's science, obviously, and medical. So 3 branch of service colors. Any one of those could represent you, depending on what kind of a member you are, where you serve aboard the Dauntless. I serve in the command department, so I get the red branch of service color. Yours might be different. In fact, roughly half of the personnel on board actually wear the gold branch of service color. This you'll also notice is different in different time periods in Star Trek canon. We might do another episode about that. In fact, we'll be mentioning it a bit later when we get to alternate uniforms. But these are the 3 colors and how they are used in our specific uniform set. The next thing we need to mention quickly is rank insignia. So we're not going to go into a lot of detail about these now. We're going to do a future version about ranks and promotions and that kind of thing. But these have a specific appearance and they're worn in a specific way. In uniforms that do have the rank insignia worn, which is most of them, they are typically worn on the right-hand collar here, right here. You'll notice that mine is on both sides, not just on the right-hand side. That is because I am a flag officer and the Admiralty ranks from rank Commodore and up. You wear it on both sides of the collar. Everybody else wears it on just the right-hand side. It's represented by these gold and black pips for the officer ranks, by various chevrons and bars for the Marines. And for enlisted personnel, they have a little embroidered panel with little white stripes on it and little white dots indicating the rank there. Again, we'll go into that in more detail in a future episode. I just wanted to indicate that that's where rank happens. Not all of our uniforms have rank displayed upon them, but when they do, that's where it is. It's usually on the right-hand side, or if you're an Admiralty rank, it's on both sides of the collar and sometimes on the sleeves as well within these red stripes. I'm not wearing those now, but that is sometimes worn in that place as well. All right, moving on to other important accessories, specifically comm badges. So you'll notice I'm wearing my comm badge here on my left breast, and that is the standard comm badge that is worn with this uniform set, the 2373 set. It's the comm badge that was first seen in around the time of the beginning of Star Trek Voyager. Everyone in Starfleet, at least in Star Trek canon, switched to this comm badge design at the same time. We'll notice that at the episodes of Deep Space Nine that are set roughly in the same period, they switched to that comm badge too. And also Star Trek Generations, which is a movie that came out roughly at the same time. Also, they were all wearing that design of comm badge. So this is the correct comm badge design for wear with this uniform. But as part of SFI, we have an alternative comm badge option, which is the SFI comm badge that is available for purchase from the Starfleet Quartermaster. It looks like that. I don't have one yet, but that's what it looks like. It's roughly the same size as this. It's just a different shape. And it's pretty cool because it's unique to our organization, and it will also become available with these plug-inable inserts, which will allow you to modify and customize your comm badge according to things that you've done in your Starfleet career. So that's going to be pretty cool. I'm looking forward to getting one and seeing that when those inserts start to arrive. But generally speaking, this is the correct comm badge to wear with this uniform. So you'll notice that it includes the silver delta. It has these little wing-shaped lobes on either side. It's not the silver delta with the round shield behind it. It has these little rectangular trapezoidal shapes on either side. This is the correct comm badge for use with all of our uniforms. How the comm badge is worn. It's always worn the same way, and that is on the left breast. So it's here on my left breast over here. It's a centimeter or 2 below the gray stripe if you're wearing one of these uniforms that has the shoulder padding. Otherwise, it's just situated in a place on the left shoulder. It's on the left breast like this, so that it looks good. You don't want it hanging down. You don't want it pointing too high up. You don't want it in your armpit. You don't want it in the middle. You want it nice and centered there on your left breast so that it's nice and obvious. All right, so that is comm badges. And again, comm badges are not worn with all uniforms. In fact, they can be worn with all uniforms, but some of them they're required, like the SDU. Some of them they are optional, but we'll get into more detail about that next. Another optional accessory that comes with Starfleet, as you'll notice I'm wearing mine today, is the Starfleet name badge. I don't usually wear this for these uniforms, but I wanted to wear it today to give you a sense of what it looks like. This is, again, available through the SFI website. I believe it'll be on the Quartermaster soon as well, once the supply issues are sorted out. And it has the Starfleet insignia. It has your name, your security clearance code, and various other details about you. This is not required to be worn at any time. You wear it when you feel it's appropriate. I typically wear this to conventions so that it can create a visual distinction between me wearing my uniform and cosplayers who might be cosplaying as various Star Trek characters. It doesn't always help because people don't necessarily recognize what they're looking at when they see it, but that's usually when I prefer to wear it. There are also, an option on military style identification tags, dog tags. I've got mine here. Here they are. These need to come with a proviso. So these, I've had several instances where people have come up to me in public, see me wear these, and ask if I serve or have served in the military, and I haven't. So I don't want to be guilty of anything resembling stolen valor. So although I wear my ID tags every single day, I almost always wear them tucked into my shirt so that nobody can see them. I enjoy wearing them because it's a physical, tactile reminder of my Starfleet membership that's always attached to my body. But I don't want to lead to any false impressions in people who might see them. So the only times I'll display my ID tags, my Starfleet dog tags, is when I'm at a Starfleet event, typically when I'm wearing one of the more casual uniforms, and then they can be hanging out on the outside. So everybody who is present recognizes the context of those tags. They know what they mean, know what they're for, and they're not going to confuse me for a military personnel. But I don't want to create that impression in other people, so I prefer to keep them covered most of the time. That is up to you. You don't even necessarily have to wear them at all. It's not required to even own a set, but if you do want to own a set, there are requirements here on the Dauntless website that can tell you on how to configure it for your specific purposes, and then maybe you just keep it on your shelf at home, or maybe you wear it hidden like I do. That's entirely up to you. All right, that's enough of these kinds of things. We're going to move on to the actual uniforms now. We're going to start with Class B. There are three classes of uniforms, A, B, and C. Class B is the one that we would wear most of the time. It's the official dress code for most missions by default. So we're going to start with the Class B uniforms, and that is this standard version, as we saw a moment ago. Well, that image is, oh, there it is. So this is the standard Class B uniform. It has the gray bodysuit. It has, the black bodysuit with the gray quilted shoulders like this. It then has a color-coded undershirt, which has a little bit of a false mandarin collar there. And then it also has color-coded sleeve stripe that matches the color of the collar. It wears the combat on the left breast and the rank insignia on the right collar. And that's how it looks for everybody. It's worn with black boots. It comes in two shapes, as it were, which is the one-piece variant, which is what we're looking at here in this image, where it's just one big bodysuit, or it can come in a two-piece version where you have a jacket and trousers. From personal experience, the two-piece variant is much more comfortable, but your mileage may vary. So that's the basic Class B uniform, but there are some other things that are worth remembering about that. Oh dear, I've lost myself. There we go. So this is the version worn by standard enlisted personnel and commissioned officers. Most people will wear that version of the uniform. As I mentioned, there's the two-piece variant, which consists of trousers and a jacket. And then there is a captain's variant. So this is worn exclusively by the commanding officer of a starship. So we see this in Star Trek canon a few times, where the captain of a starship is the one member of the crew who's never really off duty. As a result, he's often given the option of a more casual version of the uniform that he can wear during his duty shift. That's perhaps a bit more comfortable and a bit more provides a bit of diversity from his regular day-to-day uniform. So in this particular uniform set, that's this one. I think I have a zoomed in version there, which instead of the full jacket, it just has kind of a waistcoat with the gray quilting on it. And then here you can also see the undershirt layers. Here's the undershirt, which can be worn, again, off-duty with just the comm badge or even just a vest. But this is not standard uniform code. This is when you're off duty. Once we've completed the mission and we're having a drink afterwards at somebody's home, you can slip your jacket off and that's what it looks like. But this is the captain's variant of the standard duty uniform. Cadets also have a particular variant of this uniform. This is not a great picture, but you can kind of get a sense of what it looks like. It's the same basic layout, but instead of being black, the bodysuit is gray. Instead of being gray, the shoulders are branch of service color. And instead of being branch of service color, the collar is again gray. The one stylistic difference between the cadet SDU and the basic SDU is that cadets have pockets on the outside of their trousers like that. The regular SDU can have pockets too, but they're designed to be subtle, whereas the cadet pockets are right there on the outside, kind of like cargo trousers. Cadets are members that are under the age of 18. We don't currently have any on board. We don't usually have cadets on board, but we make this code available for such occasions when we might have cadets on board. And then there is the Admiralty version, which is for members of rank Commodore or higher. That is the version I'm wearing right now. So it is a two-piece version with a longer jacket. There's a gold piping down the zip in the front. There's also a heavy belt, which is off the bottom of the camera here, but you can see it there. That belt buckle can be modified depending on your particular assignment. Sometimes some people just wear a generic Starfleet or Federation belt buckle. Some people will wear a belt buckle based on their regional assignment, that kind of thing. But that is the Admiral's uniforms. Also, the sleeve stripes like this are thicker and golded, and banded in gold. And sometimes you wear your rank insignia also on that sleeve stripe. But again, that's only for members of rank Commodore or higher. And currently we only have one of those on board, and that's me. There are alternatives, and we'll get to those alternatives in a minute. But first, we're going to move on to the Class A uniform. Sorry, I'm locked myself out of my notes here. There we go. Yes, I believe so. Class A is next. And that's over here. Class A uniform is your formal uniform. So think of this as the Starfleet equivalent of black ties, so a tuxedo or a ball gown. Instead of wearing one of those, you would wear a Class A uniform, also known as a dress uniform. And this comes again in 3 or 4 versions. We have the enlisted personnel version, which is quite rarely seen. I believe it's only ever been seen in one scene in canon. That's in Star Trek Nemesis, in the wedding scene. We can see some enlisted personnel wearing this. So we don't have any good high detail images of this, but it can be inferred based on what we do see. It's a gray loose jacket with some white piping around the collar, around the sleeves, and up and down the sides, so making it look like it's an open jacket. So you see a similar line here in Captain Picard's uniform. It's mimicking that line, but all in gray instead of white and gold. Then we move on to the commissioned officers version, which has a shorter white jacket and then has what looks like a grayish blue undershirt underneath it. It's not actually a separate garment. It's part of the same garment, but it's designed to look like it's a separate garment that is quilted horizontally with a zip all the way down. It also has branch of service color piping around the collar. You can't really see in this image, but that's what it looks like. It has these gold outlines, white quilting on the shoulders, and a branch of service color sleeve stripe, so you can see what's going on. It's worn with black trousers, which have a gold stripe down the outside to make it look nice and fancy. Then there is the flag officers version. So that is for personnel that are rank captain and higher. So that includes admirals. So it's the same exact design as the officers version, except it has a white undershirt, false undershirt, also with quilting. The admiral's version is slightly different in that instead of having a solid sleeve stripe, it has 2 sleeve stripes with a rank insignia between the 2. Otherwise, they are the same. Alternatives for the Class A. If you don't own a Class A uniform and you are attending an event where a Class A uniform is required, you may substitute a Class B, an SDU, maybe one as an alternative to a dress uniform if necessary. But try to get yourself a proper dress uniform if you can, especially if you know that you're going to be going to one of these events like a wedding or something like that months in advance. That gives you time to invest in a proper dress uniform. So here we go, have a closer look. I'd forgotten that I had this image. This is much easier to see. Here's the officer's version, which has that grayish blue undershirt with the branch of service color piping around the collar and the branch of service sleeve stripe. Officer's version is the flag officer's version has the white again with the branch of service color piping. And here in the admiral's version, you can see the double sleeve stripe with the rank bar over it. Next, we have Class C uniforms. So Class C is mission-specific uniforms. So these are uniforms that are reserved for specific kinds of missions and under particular circumstances, and will be specialized for the mission in question. The most common uniform we have in the Class C range is a uniform that is unique to the Dauntless. So this is not part of the Star Trek canon. This is something that we implemented ourselves because we thought that it was a good practical thing to do. And that is what we call the LU, the leisure uniform. And this is essentially a t-shirt and jeans. So it's a t-shirt, plain t-shirt with no insignia on it in your branch of service color. So in my case, that would be red. If you're in operations or engineering or security, it would be gold. If you're in science or medical, it would be teal. And that's paired typically with a pair of blue jeans and dark colored shoes. Easy as that. There are upgrades that you can do to this uniform to make it a little bit fancier. You can buy a Dauntless sleeve patch. I don't have one with me, but it's basically just the Dauntless insignia here, which you would then stitch to your left sleeve, and that makes it look a little bit more official. You can wear a com badge with it if you want to. You can upgrade it with a cap. We'll talk about caps in a moment. You can also switch out the blue jeans for other more appropriate trousers. So for example, when I go running with the 5K running missions, I will often wear a version of the LU that has a red t-shirt and black running tights. Just that's more comfortable for me. So the blue jeans are the standard version of that, but you can vary it up depending on how you need it to be for the mission that you are undertaking. There are also different variants of this depending on your personal preferences and the weather. For example, you can wear a long sleeve t-shirt instead of a regular t-shirt if it's a little bit chilly. If you don't own a long sleeve t-shirt, you can wear your standard t-shirt but with a black long sleeve t-shirt underneath it. That still looks pretty cool. Or again, you can swap out those blue jeans for any dark colored trousers that are appropriate for the mission. So that is the LU. So that because it's really cheap and easy to get, all you have to do is buy yourself that t-shirt, which you can get at most retailers for under 100 Rand, and pair it with the blue jeans you already have in your wardrobe. You're good to go with an LU. The accessories, the patches, and all that kind of thing are optional. Just the t-shirt and the jeans is all you need. So you can today, if you don't already, you can today go out to the local mall, pick up a t-shirt, and for under 100 Rand, you've got your first Dauntless uniform ready to go. Just make sure you get the right color and you're fine. And again, these branch of service colors are best effort. You don't have to match the shade exactly. You just want to try and get it as close as possible. So although we try to have this specific shade of red, any shade of red is acceptable as long as it's not too orange or not too purple. Then red is fine. Again, with the teal, we want to try and get this shade of teal as close as possible, but if it's a little slightly darker blue or perhaps a slightly greenier color, that's fine too. Again, with the yellow, all of those, the branch of service color is best effort. You'll even notice that in Star Trek canon, individual personnel have variations in the colors of their uniforms from one character to the next. So even when they're standing together in the same room under the same lighting conditions, wearing what is ostensibly the same uniform, somebody like Dax and Bashir will have slightly different shades of blue in their uniform. So that's acceptable too, to have slight variations in that shade. Although they are ostensibly the same color, there is going to be a little bit of natural variation just based on what's available. The next Class C uniform we have is the sorry, I wanted to talk about hats before we move on to the BDU. So I mentioned that caps are an available option for wearing with the Class C, and we have these Dauntless caps. It looks kind of like a Navy cap. Again, I would be cautious about the context that you wear this cap in because it looks a bit like a Navy cap. You don't want to be wearing it in any circumstances where somebody might mistake you for being an actual military personnel. Most people wear it like this, where it's just the black peak cap with the USS Dauntless and then a side view and our registry number underneath it. Personnel who are grades 05, so that's commander, rank commander and up, have the option of adding scrambled eggs to the peak. Scrambled eggs are surprisingly difficult to find in South Africa, although you can buy them on Amazon. Most of the manufacturers who sell them there refuse to ship outside of the US. I don't know why that's the case. So I've never actually managed to get my hands on a pair of scrambled eggs for my peak cap. So you'll notice in this hat, I'm not wearing one, but that's fine. This is perfectly acceptable just like that. These can be purchased from the ship's quartermaster. We keep some in stock most of the time. Otherwise, you can go to our Cafe Press store. We'll probably be replacing that with a new store soon, where you can buy just a stitch-on patch that you can add to any peak cap, and that's nice and easy. All right, moving back to the second Class C uniform, and that is the battle dress uniform. So this is based on one episode of Star Trek Deep Space Nine, where we saw personnel wearing these uniforms, which look like it's a battle dress uniform. So it's essentially a full head-to-toe black outfit. It seems to have two pieces in it. The shoulder is a slightly bluer shade of black than the rest of it, and then it has the branch of service color stripe across it there. Sometimes they wore the com badge with it, sometimes they didn't. No rank insignia are displayed, which is not unusual for battle dress uniforms. So this is, as far as we can tell, the battle dress uniform for Starfleet ground troops. So we've adapted that design for our use, and it looks kind of like that. We've opened it up to make it more practical. So for our purposes, mimicking that exact screen accurate uniform is surprisingly difficult. But if you can assemble a uniform that is black from head to toe, but has that color coded stripe across the middle of it, whether or not you wear it with a com badge, whether or not you wear it with an undershirt, that is all acceptable. As long as you've got the color patches in the right spot, then that's all fine. So if you are doing something that is combat-y, you're doing, say, paintball, for example, if you've got a pair of black overalls sitting over your paintball armor and it has your branch of service color stripe across it like that, then that counts. If you're doing something like fencing and you've got your fencing outfit designed in such a way that it's black with your branch of color service stripe, then that's counts as a uniform as well. Those will all be certifiable as battle dress uniforms or combat fatigues. So we like to keep these things nice and variable and adjustable depending on the needs of the specific member. And that takes us to the third one, the physical training uniform. So this is again based on some canon uniforms. So the first version we saw in canon was this one. So this comes from Star Trek Voyager. Now the Voyager crew uses a slightly older uniform set than the one we do. But as far as we can tell, some of these variant uniforms, I mean, they only ever appeared once and never again. So this is the closest we have. So this is what we've used as our example. So we saw this episode. I've forgotten the name of the episode now, but you might recognize it early in Voyager's run, where these 4 crew members were all running around the ship, and this was the outfit that they wore for running. We also saw later in season 3, I believe it was, they were wearing this uniform for climbing, which looks very similar, although the details are significantly different. This is a much simpler and softer uniform. This is more structured and rigid and has different fabrics. The basic idea is the same. It's a gray uniform with a branch of service color stripe along the side. So we have, sorry, there we go. There's the right page. So we've once again adapted this uniform design for our purposes. So here we have, it's a head to toe gray uniform with branch of service color stripe across the chest and down the sleeves. May or may not be worn with a com badge. That's up to you. The key is that the top and the trousers need to be the same shade of gray, but then you can vary that based on your requirements. So here we have the long sleeve version like they used here. So that's kind of like that thing there. Or you can go even shorter with the sleeves. You can have a sleeveless variant where the stripe just goes across the chest there. As long as it's gray with your branch of service color in the right places, then that counts as one of our uniforms. So that is the Class C uniform list. We've got the 3 standard versions. That is the leisure uniform, the battle dress uniform, and the PTU, the physical training uniform. What most of us end up doing is we just use the LU for all 3 functions. So because it can be a bit of a hassle to put together all these uniforms for specific purposes, the LU, that's the this uniform here, is adaptable enough and adjustable enough and inexpensive enough that we can just use it for paintball or we can use it for running. I use mine for running. Now, there is another occasion where we use different uniforms. Oh, hi, Chief Newton. I see you there in the chat. Thanks for joining us. There's another occasion where we use different uniforms. You might have noticed me, even in these videos, occasionally wearing a uniform different to this one. So although this is my SDU, I'm sometimes wearing a yellow uniform. What's that about? So we have guidelines for wearing alternate uniforms. So Star Trek canon, as you may recall, has a wide variety of different uniforms. And as fans, we often like to collect those uniforms and we want to be able to display them. And just because the Dauntless has a specific uniform set doesn't mean we shouldn't be allowed to wear them from time to time. So we make accommodation for occasions where wearing alternate uniforms is possible. So when does that happen? So typically every month from the 25th until the end of the month, you may substitute your normal Dauntless uniform for an alternate uniform. Also, some special occasions like big conventions or things like that will make it available so that you may wear your alternate uniform instead of your normal Dauntless uniform. So what uniforms are acceptable when we're talking about alternate uniforms? So there are 2 broad categories of those. One is Starfleet International's divisional uniforms. So the Starfleet Marine Corps and Special Operations both have their own uniform requirements for designing their own versions of the uniforms. As you can see here, they look a little bit different to the standard Starfleet uniforms. The colors are different, the layout is different, they have extra insignia on them, they wear medals and things like that. So if your uniform is consistent with those standards and it is appropriate for you, then that is acceptable. Special Operations has a similar setup. Here I mentioned the Region 8 regional staff. So we in the Region 8 regional staff, we use a particular uniform set and we have our own custom insignia. So as as a member of the Regional 8 staff, I'm entitled to wear that version during the alternate uniforms period as well. But just to make sure that the alternate uniforms are adhered to correctly, we have to check a few things. So firstly, it must reflect your correct rank and branch of service. So remember, we spoke about rank, we spoke about branch of service, and they must be right. Now, this can be a little bit tricky because different uniforms from different periods in the Star Trek canon would have different branch of service uniform colors. So take, for example, a role like communications. In our uniform set, communications falls under the operations branch of service. And so the appropriate color for wearing that, for wear with that, would be gold. That is command gold. But that hasn't always been the case. We saw in, for example, in the original series period, the color codes were different. So in that time period, operations wore red instead of gold. So that's why we see Lieutenant Uhura, who is a communications officer, wearing red. So she belongs to the operations branch of service and the communications department, and it's appropriate that she wear red branch of service color with her uniform because that's different in that period. Another example is Ensign Hoshi Sato back in Star Trek Enterprise. In that time period, communications department didn't fall under operations at all. It fell under sciences. So Hoshi Sato's branch of service color is blue or teal. So it's important to understand the uniform set that you're looking at, understanding its historic context within the Star Trek canon, and understanding where your department and your branch of service fits into the grander scheme of things to make sure that it is correct and accurate. Also, these rank insignia are only relevant for this specific uniform set and maybe a handful of others. Most uniform sets use their own special rank insignia, and you'd have to use the correct rank insignia for your rank. And that can be tricky in some uniform sets. For example, in the Enterprise era uniform set, they didn't use the ranks of Lieutenant Junior Grade or Lieutenant Commander. So if you carry that rank and you want to wear one of those uniforms, you're going to have to figure out how to make that work. There is no Enterprise era rank insignia that signifies Lieutenant Commander. So you're going to have to talk to your ship's quartermaster, or even come to me and we can try and figure something out if that's something that you want to wear. The next thing is that it must reflect an actual assignment you have. So it needn't be necessarily your Dauntless position, but it needs to represent a position that you actually hold. So if you are the regional communications officer for Region 8, then that entitles you to wear the appropriate color and rank insignia and any other insignia for that position. If you don't hold that position, you may not wear those colors. Must display the correct insignia, including uniform sets that display information that others do not. So, for example, the monster maroon uniforms from the original series movie era, they had little, what they call pips and squeaks, little insignia down the sleeve, which indicate your period of service. Your uniform, if you're going to wear one of those, needs to have the correct insignia in the right place and the right design. So that's included in the correct and accurate certification for that. Your uniform must be screen accurate within reason. We're not going to nitpick too harshly, but we do want it to be recognizable as the uniform in question. And another thing is it must be a Starfleet uniform. So we're not, so that means either United Earth or United Federation of Planets Starfleet. It can't be from non-Starfleet divisions or groups. So it can't be a Klingon or a Vulcan or a Bajoran uniform because those are not Starfleet. It definitely can't be Maquis or Terran Empire or Temporal Agents or any of those kinds of things. Those do not count as Starfleet uniforms and therefore would not be uniforms. Those would be costumes, not uniforms. And they must conform to established norms. Original designs are not permitted. So it's not acceptable for you to just go and design your own uniform because you think it's cool. Sorry, no. If you want it to be a uniform, it has to be one of the accepted uniforms. Now, to be fair, we don't always see every single version of every single uniform on screen. But if we see one or two versions of a uniform, we can extrapolate what the other versions of it might be. So if we see a specific command uniform from a specific time period, we can probably infer what the operations and medical uniforms might have looked like for that same time period. We can infer what the rank insignia might have looked like and that kind of thing. Those kinds of extrapolations are acceptable. If you have unanswered questions about that, you can come to the quartermaster or to me and we can figure it out. but that is the kind of thing that we're looking at. Now, within those constraints, there are a lot of options available. So many different uniform sets that have appeared. This isn't even a comprehensive list. I haven't updated this list in a couple of years now, but there are so many different uniform sets available that you can choose from. If you wanted to build a comprehensive collection of all the uniforms that are appropriate for you, you would have a hard time doing it. So these are are some of the different uniform sets that are available, and you have a lot of choices for your alternate uniform week. So that's the last few days of every month, and for conventions where alternate uniforms are permitted. Another alternate uniform that is permitted, which is actually is mission specific, is parkrun milestone t-shirts. So I mentioned a few videos ago that parkrun is one of the missions that we support as a regular away mission. And if you attend that mission wearing your parkrun milestone t-shirt, that counts as a uniform. So these milestone t-shirts are achieved by participating in parkrun. You scan your barcode every week to register your participation through them. Once you've completed 10 runs, if you're a child, we don't really support that here, but if you've completed 50 runs or 100 runs, or I think it's 25 now is available, you can then purchase the appropriate milestone t-shirt through the parkrun website for a discounted amount, and then you are encouraged to wear your milestone t-shirt when you're running in parkrun. You also get equivalent milestone t-shirts for when you're volunteering as well. Now, because we don't want to interfere with your ability to display your parkrun milestone, you are permitted to register your parkrun milestone t-shirt as a Starfleet uniform when you are at parkrun. If you're attending 2 missions in a row, one of which is parkrun and the other one is something else, your parkrun milestone t-shirt won't count as uniform for the second mission. You're going to have to bring a clean uniform with you to switch into. It only counts for parkrun missions, but it does count for those. And there are other options available. There are the various tank tops and other kinds of things that are available for parkrun milestones. All of those are applicable if it has the appropriate milestone number on it and it has the parkrun insignia on it, and it is the correct color code for your specific milestone that you've unlocked, then that is an acceptable uniform for those missions. There's one more thing that I want to talk about when it comes to uniforms, and that is weapons. So back in one of those images I showed you a little earlier, I was holding a phaser in one of the photographs, and weapons are a bit of a controversial topic. Generally speaking, we prefer our personnel not to carry real weapons on missions. Now, we recognize that under plenty of jurisdictions, it is legal and acceptable and even encouraged for people to carry weapons out in the world with them. We would ask that our Dauntless crew members refrain from doing so. We're not going to tell you not to, but we're going to ask that you choose not to carry any real weapons with you. We would also ask that if you're going to carry replica weapons, so these are Star Trek weapons that look like the real thing, we would ask that you only do so in the right context so as not to create any kind of misconception about what we do. So I will, at conventions, sometimes carry a sidearm, a Type 1 hand phaser, because frankly, it doesn't look like a real gun. It only becomes clear what it does in the context of when people are taking photographs of me in my uniform, but even then, it's not always appropriate. A Type 2 phaser pistol is the correct sidearm for certain personnel. If you serve in security department, basically, that is the correct sidearm for wear with your uniform. It's a slightly bigger and more obvious looking thing. And then we have ceremonial weapons like the Type 3 phaser compression rifle. The thing with the compression rifle is that it looks more like a real gun, and you want to be very careful about what circumstances you carry that around in. In fact, you probably shouldn't carry it around in public. Even at a lot of conventions, they would probably stop you at the entrance and ask why you're carrying that thing that looks like a real weapon, because even real looking weapons can be used to enact violence, even if they can't do any damage themselves. So carrying weapons, please be careful when doing that. Don't carry real weapons. And when you're carrying replicas, be mindful of the circumstances of when that happens. All right, this has been another long briefing, and I want to make sure that we touch on one more point before we go, and that is, where do we start? So there's a lot of information about uniforms, and it can probably be pretty overwhelming, especially if you've recently joined and you don't know where to go. So we have on our website the Where Do I Start guide. Just head over to the uniforms section of the website. It's under crew resources, uniforms and equipment, and you'll see the Where Do I Start link. And this will give you a step-by-step guide on how you can begin. So you start today by building your Class C leisure uniform. You go out and buy yourself a t-shirt, pair it with some jeans, and you're good to go. Once you've got that going, you can upgrade your LU nicely. You can add the cap, the sleeve patches, any other accessories that might be appropriate. And once that is customized to your preference, you can then start looking at putting together your Class B standard duty uniform. It should be noted that certain positions within the Dauntless, certain duty stations, require you to have an SDU ready to go. If you're going to be serving at a higher level, you need to represent yourself as a high-level officer. But you don't have to do this all alone. We can offer you advice, and we can share links and point you in the right direction so that you can put together your SDU. Once you've assembled your SDU, make sure you get the right insignia, the right accessories. Again, we can help you and offer you advice on how to get that. You want to make sure that your uniforms are proper quality, that they are fitted nicely, and that they look good. Nobody wants a cheap and shoddy looking uniform. Sometimes that means spending a little extra. Sometimes it means taking it to the tailor after it's arrived. But again, we have lots of advice and tips and tricks on how to do this kind of thing. Once you've got your SDU, the next step obviously is your dress uniform. You want to make sure that you're ready for our next formal event, your next wedding or a reception or something like that. And then you can look at the various other uniform options available, including alternate uniforms. All right, so that has been a lot of information about uniforms. I know this has been another long one, but hopefully this one was a little bit less dry than the one about departments. If you have any questions about uniforms and, well, anything about uniforms, if you've got more questions that you think maybe we should have a follow-up video about some specific aspects of uniforms, I would definitely be open to that. Please let me know in the comments, either on YouTube or Facebook, or drop me a message on Discord. But that is going to be it for now, and we're going to call it here. Swart out.